Welcome to the Travel Winds podcast. Today, my guest is CEO Denyelle Bruno. How are you today, Denyelle?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing excellent. Appreciate the time. You're the new CEO of Perfect Union, a cannabis company based here in California. And I'm really excited to talk to you because I think it's interesting to see someone with your background take over an existing company in the cannabis industry that I think, in my opinion, which means nothing at this point, really needs it.
Thank you. I've gotten that from a lot of people. I mean, I very intentionally chose this industry, partially because I love the industry and I see all the same potential that everyone else does, but also because I saw a unique opportunity for my skill set to maybe make some changes to the industry, grow it to the next level.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, between taxes, regulations, government, everybody's stepping on their own toes. Police departments, banks now getting on board.
Yep.
I mean, there are a lot of hurdles. Yeah, I know when cannabis became medically approved and then obviously recreational, it still creates a lot of hurdles for people like Perfect Union.
There are a lot of hurdles. It's a difficult business to make money in. There are very few cannabis companies, despite some of the high volumes, that are actually profitable. Yeah. We're one of the few that's EBITDA positive. And we're going to continue to grow that way. But, running any business in California, any retail business in California is hard. Yeah. Even traditional businesses struggle to make money. But this business, because of, to your point, all the regulations and taxes, that not only make it hard for legitimate businesses to operate, but incentivizes the illegitimate businesses or black market businesses to operate. There's some real challenges.
Yeah. You've been doing this for about 6 months now, right? Is that about right?
Oh, gosh.
5 months, 4 months?
3.5, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. It feels like, a week, and also it feels like a year, depending on the day.
Exactly. Can you give my listeners a little bit of your background?
Sure. So, prior to joining Perfect Union and becoming CEO of this, cannabis company, which is arguably one of the largest retail cannabis companies in the state, I was CEO and president of a restaurant chain called Tender Greens, farm to fork restaurant. All of the products were sourced from farms and other socially responsible businesses. We were farm to fork. Every restaurant had an executive chef. We had one of the highest AUVs, which is average units volumes of anyone in the industry. And it was a fantastic business. I loved it. I was there for almost 4 years, except for the pandemic almost broke me. Yeah. And I left there saying, okay, next path is either cannabis or the pet industry. So
I see the dog behind you. So
yeah, exactly. I'm actually on the board of the American Veterinarian Group. So I sort of check both boxes, both growth industries and recession proof. Prior to joining Tender Greens, I was the president of retail for Dry Bar, which is a personal care business. We had about 100 locations across the country. I think I opened about 70 of them. Prior to that, I ran the retail side of Peet's Coffee. So we had, I think, maybe at the time I left, maybe 200 corporate locations, 100 licensed partners. And I also worked on the integration of Caribou Coffee business. So we converted about 50 Caribou Coffees to Peet's Coffee. So lots of retail experience. And then, the job I usually get the most questions about is I was on the team of people who created the Apple retail stores. So I was one of 7 people tapped to build that vision, create those stores. And I actually personally opened the first location 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if you can take that, the corporate mindset of growing franchises and licensed locations and all that. Do you see, I mean, obviously you have 12 stores now, 12 or 13?
We have 13 stores in California and 5 in New Mexico.
Okay. Because I was going to ask you, do you start dipping your toes into Oregon and Colorado and then it becomes a whole different set of regulations?
No, we're not going to. I mean, other people, that may be part of their strategy. We have no interest in being a multi-state operator. we're in New Mexico because I think there was an opportunist move there, and there's some exciting things happening there, but my focus is solely on California. California is the largest cannabis market in the world. There's tons of opportunity here. And because it's so challenging, I think we have a huge competitive advantage because
You're already in.
We're already in, and I have the team that has a different level of expertise than a lot of the companies in the cannabis industry, quite frankly.
Yeah. So my background, I don't know. I sell cowboy boots for a living. And
That's my dream job, by the way. I've said that. I'm not just saying that. I've literally said that on other podcasts. That is my dream job.
We'll have to set something up. So one of my accounts is Boot Barn, and they have 300 stores now. Their goal is 400 and actually 500. But they went when I started with them, I think they had 24. So to see the explosion over the last decade, it's been interesting, and it took them a while to figure it out. Do you think you'll have some of the same hiccups?
So Boot Barn's interesting. I've shopped there, and I probably have, I think, 20 pairs of cowboy boots, by the way.
That's not enough.
Well, for somebody who doesn't actually ride horses, I've been asked when I'm in fully decked out what kind of horse I ride, which makes me feel like a complete poser. But I do like cowboy boots a lot.
All matters.
I think boots are a great business because in the world of retail, there's a lot of companies that have moved to either who have moved strategically or who have been affected by the move to online shopping.
Yeah.
Boots, I know this, they're very personal. You've got to try them on. You've got to feel them on your feet. You've got to see what they look like. They're a little bit different than other items in retail that are either more commoditized or that you could just see, a shirt or a pair of pants and say, I'm going to try that on and send it back. It's a little bit different. So I think their business model is really good. But, any business, and especially retail business, that's worth its weight in salt is one that grows slowly and thoughtfully. There aren't many success stories for retail businesses that have just exploded in growth because it takes a lot of thinking about where to grow, how to grow, who your consumer is, what they're doing before and after they shop your business, who else what other kinds of industries that they're fans of. It just takes some time. And, everywhere I've started, I've sort of taken a minute to say, what are our objectives for the business? Who is our customer? Do we have a model that's profitable?
Yeah.
And where should we be? How should we grow? And how should those locations sort of interact with each other? Because so many times people, will get money and they'll just start plopping down stores and they don't really think through it. But so I've paused on growth on many occasions, done that work, and then started back up, fairly aggressively once I felt like I had all those details worked out.
Yeah.
And so I think the slow growth, getting those things figured out, and then, more explosive growth makes a lot more sense than somebody just jumping right in.
One of the things I wanted to ask you too was, I think the hardest part for most retail stores is employee retention. Because bud tenders are same like selling boots. Selling boots isn't like wearing sandals. People try on sandals, they fit or they don't, they leave. Boots, like you said, you have to shape them, they fit, how you're walking, what are you doing in them. Once they train these people, you want to keep them there because you just spent 6 months. The same thing with bud tenders, I would think. There's this level of expertise and professionalism. So how do you get around the employee issue?
Well, you don't get around it. Any entry level hourly job is going to have a certain degree of turnover that you kind of have to plan into the business.
Yeah.
That said, I think there's a ton of value in really thinking through who you're employing and what your unique proposition is to keep an employee excited about working in the business. Again, by nature, these folks aren't always looking for a long-term career. They might be doing it between other things. They might be doing it, to buy time for something or to get a certain amount of experience. super honest, sometimes there are employees who just get jobs just because for nefarious reasons. I mean, I used to have a position at one of the companies that took in a lot of cash, and it was, there was a lot of turnover in that role.
We've had that too.
So, you can't avoid it entirely. I think for me, it's more about, am I better than the industry standard? Because I'm worse than the industry standard, I'm doing something wrong. There's a lot of things you need to get right to keep people engaged. If you're doing things really well, then you've got sort of loyalty and commitment from employees that doesn't exist in other like businesses, but that's rare. But I think that's the goal, is to make sure people love their job, to make sure they feel respected, to make sure their schedule is flexible enough as possible, to make sure they feel like they're part of something. I mean, all of those things are really, really important. And they might get you to slightly better than average. But if you don't do any of those things, you're just going to be, turning people in and out, and you're going to be spending tons of money on hiring and training new people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's, the one thing you didn't mention was money. I mean, I don't think it's.
I didn't mention money.
It's not about money. I mean.
Yeah, there's a certain degree when you're talking hourly and you're talking, several dollars an hour difference, then, people have the practical consideration that might affect their decisions. But generally speaking, if people are happy and they like their jobs, a few more dollars one way or another isn't going to make the big difference.
Right. I think, unfortunately, I think many retail places don't heed that. It's very transactional.
Oh yeah, they don't. Yeah, and most retail places are customer first. I'm employee first.
Yeah.
I'm employee first because if you have happy employees, it's going to have an impact on the customer.
Yeah,
if you just focus on the customers, not the employees, then you're actually negatively impacting the customer.
Yep. And like I said, it's usually not about money. I mean, I used to be in the cabinet industry, which was very competitive, and we had installers, and it wasn't always about how much you paid. I mean, some people are like that anyways, but
most people just want to feel respected, like they're part of something, and that you see them as individuals. I mean, if you can get those three things down, that goes a long way. It goes a lot further than a couple dollars an hour for sure.
Great. How much traveling are you doing now? Because most of your stores are in Northern California.
Yeah, I'm not doing as much as I used to. Because
was that part of the consideration?
Being in California was part of the consideration, but I actually like traveling a lot. So I don't mind it. There are times when I was traveling 3 weeks a month, and it was a lot of fun. But right now it's mostly Northern California, a little bit New Mexico, occasional meetings in Florida or New York, but mostly I stay local.
Have you made it to? Oh, I don't even know if they've had any of the trade shows, the cannabis trade shows.
Yeah, they do. There's a big one called Hall of Flowers.
I know they do. Have they opened them back up yet?
Yeah, they've opened them back up.
Okay.
I didn't go to some of the bigger ones. There is one, the cannabis industry, CIA. I should know this anyway. There was one in San Francisco about a month and a half ago, and it was my first cannabis trade show. And it felt just like any other trade show.
Yeah. Is it? And I've told people this. For me, it's weird. I'm in my 50s. So cannabis, when I was growing up, was really illegal. And you really had to, you snuck around. You had to go to a friend's house and this and that. So just to see it out and about. And some of the dispensaries I've been in are phenomenal. I mean, they're better than most retail places I go into. It's crazy. It's
mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. I'm actually opening a location in San Francisco on Folsom Street, probably in April, maybe May of this year. And it has a smoking lounge inside. And we're planning, there's going to be a wall of records and a record player and a living room. And
it's crazy.
An area where we're calling it, it's the portal, and you're going to go in and you can self DJ. We're going to have podcasts out of there. There's an outdoor. I mean, and I'm pinching myself going, am I really building this? People are going to, we're like, oh, we need to make sure we have bongs and papers out for people to be able to roll joints. And I'm thinking,
hey, whoa, you can't do that.
Really happening. So it's pretty mind bending, but it's pretty awesome too.
Because I went to, I don't know if Lowell's Cafe down here in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And that was a bizarre experience. Like going in there and then like, yes, here's your menu of marijuana and here's your menu of food and let's pair them together. And you're like, what?
I mean, that was a huge ambitious maneuver on their part. I don't think it still exists in that format. Anything that requires preparing food is massively complicated. So, adding the element of cannabis was very, very ambitious of them. But I like the idea a lot.
It was pretty spectacular. Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it's around, but it was incredible to be in public. Like,
yeah,
I'm looking around going, where's the cops?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they did also launch pre-pandemic, so that really didn't help them. But what a pioneering move.
I was going to ask you because federally it's still illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the banks in Colorado had major issues of the dispensary owners walking out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash and getting robbed at gunpoint. So then they had to hire security because they weren't able to deposit the money into a bank.
It's terrible. It's really, really bad. So yeah, it's pretty much an all cash business at this point. And we have, California banks, some of the California banks support the business.
Right.
So we can bank with them. But we don't have, there are ways around it, but we don't have relationships that equate to, credit cards and so on and so on because of the federal illegality. So, I know that there's lots of versions of bank reform out there and conversations about the future of it becoming federally legal. Those things just have to happen. I mean, this situation is putting a lot of people in danger.
Yeah. I mean, that's like I said, that because the company I work for is based in Aurora in Denver. So I would go there a couple times a year for our sales meetings and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start reading about the stories about people getting like armed security guards, and you're like, what?
Yeah, we have armed security guards in each of our locations.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's been the most unexpected thing that's happened to you since you took over a couple months ago?
Oh gosh, there have been a lot of unexpected things. Primarily, what I would say is this is a business that was brought to, legitimacy by people who were previously, criminals. Yeah. And these were people who had to do things around the law. They had to push boundaries. They had to break rules to get the business where it is today.
Yeah.
So we have to be grateful to those people for pushing hard to get the business where it is. That said, we're still dealing with an industry of a lot of people who don't understand corporate America or, don't understand how to professionalize a business or really don't appreciate rules. Because if they followed them, we wouldn't be where we are. So, the personalities, the level of sophistication, is definitely not at the level of other retail businesses yet. But I think it's moving quickly.
I don't know if you could see the parallel, but computer industry used to be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the computer programmers back in the 80s, mid to late 80s, Commodore 64, the 128, they were the hackers. They were the guys that kind of did things the wrong way. And a lot of the business owners were like, you don't have to do it that way. Do it this way.
Yeah.
And then Fry's, I remember Fry's was one store. Now they're gone. It's incredible. But, they were like the first big one to kind of come in and make it more professional. Yeah. It wasn't just the guys who had a computer hobby. So it's kind of the same way. I see parallels where, and then Apple comes in and makes it more corporate and standardized. And
there's total parallels. In fact, that was part of the appeal for me coming into this business is having the opportunity to once again be able to be a front runner and creating a business and legitimizing an industry, building a professional platform for something that has sort of been operating in the shadows. I mean, that's the thing that's exciting. And And, with the Apple stores, before we built the Apple stores, you could only buy an Apple in like a Best Buy or a CompUSA or, some of those places. The idea of creating sort of a boutique, chic experience around a computer was unheard of. I mean, for many of your listeners, that's probably surprising to hear because they can't imagine a time when there wasn't an Apple store. But before we opened the first Apple store, most people I talked to didn't know who Apple was. Yep. So, and I think, I have the very fortunate position of being able to do that again in this industry.
So I'm waiting. Are you going to will it be strange to see a cannabis store in a mall, like how you see, where you see the Apple stores now?
Yeah.
I mean, you ever see them next door?
I don't know if we'll have a cannabis store in a mall because we don't really have liquor stores in malls. I think there will be some, there's even in California, there's, every city and county has different rules around cannabis, but in many cases they have zoning around, things like schools and even churches in some cases, et cetera. So I think there will probably be some public sentiment that says this is an adult product. And so it needs to be in a place that's not surrounded by a Claire's and something else. But I do think, a strip center next to your grocery store, very possibly,
It's going to be so interesting to see that.
It's going to be crazy.
Because still now, even like I live in Redondo Beach and there's Venice and even but they're still they're
a little more removed from the main street. Yeah. Sometimes they're in back alleys or industrial centers.
No sign on the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I going to the right place?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if someone can come forward and make it more presentable, I guess. I don't know the proper word, but
I think the word is approachable. Sure. And I think it's the movement is happening quickly. The mainstreaming of cannabis is happening quickly. Right now, depending on who you talk to, about 25 to 30% of the population consumes cannabis. Over 60% of the population consumes alcohol.
Yeah.
And there are large percents of the population that take, various mood altering medications and, so I think cannabis is quickly replacing a lot of these other products for, sleeping, for example. That's a big one. I get a lot of people 60 and older saying, cannabis gummies in particular have really been a game changer for me around sleep. Not addictive, I can still interact and do things the next day. I don't have a hangover. So I think as people are getting more and more comfortable with it, it's becoming more mainstream. I mean, my own mom, I gave her a whole bunch of products and she went out with her friends. She's almost 75 and she had a birthday and she and her friends all took a limo somewhere and she was sort of passing out the product and they all were so excited and she called me back and said, okay, I have a new order for you. And I said, Mom,
I'm not
a drug dealer. There's, you could just go buy this stuff. So she was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. But this transition's happening quickly. And I don't think it'll take long for some of the stigma that's been associated with cannabis to go away as people try it.
My industry is very conservative. I mean, for the very conservative. But they're even selling CBD products for horses and everything now. So, like when I go to the rodeos and stuff, I'm looking at CBD products. So I think that's just it's normalizing it.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And these products really work, sure, people can use these products recreationally and they do. And I don't think anybody legitimate in the cannabis industry would deny that. But there are a lot of other purposes for these products that are much healthier alternatives to what people are currently using.
And you guys, the Perfect Union, spends a lot of time and money and energy into giving charities. I mean, you spend a lot of money.
We spend money trying to engage in the communities we're in.
Yeah.
So that people understand that we can have a positive impact. I mean, there have been studies done that show how significantly cannabis, the legalization of cannabis can affect things like opioid use. So in some of these markets, the cities that still push back on legalizing cannabis don't understand the statistics, because it helps with opioid addiction. It helps with alcoholism. It creates a legal place for people to purchase the product because they're purchasing it anyway. And they're probably purchasing it from criminals who have to protect themselves from other criminals. So they're carrying guns, and they're doing all kinds of other things to stay, keep their business safe. So the fact is, having a licensed cannabis dispensary located in a city is actually very, very good for the city, not to mention the millions of dollars in taxes.
Well, I was going to say, there was a city, and I won't say it, there's a city in Colorado when it first became legalized, they decided to withhold. So it was a college town. And so all the college kids were just literally going across the street because it was just the city border. And they set up a dispensary right on literally on the edge of the city.
Yeah.
So that city was just losing all the revenue.
That's right. That's right. And that's happening all over the place.
Yeah. So what do you think the big steps are going to be coming up for you guys? Is it Southern California expansion? Is it?
Yeah. So we're going to continue to expand, probably through a lot of acquisition. So we can move more quickly, but we'll continue to fill in Northern California, and then we'll slowly contiguously move to Southern California. It's really important in retail to move with sort of what we call a hub and spoke model, so that you can support the business. You don't orphan a location someplace off in the distance. You have to have the operational support in the network to make sure that business thrives. So we'll continue to expand in a responsible way. But yeah, at some point, I'd say in the next few years, we will be very well known across the state as the largest cannabis retailer in California.
Well, yeah, because you already are, right? I mean, $100 million.
Yeah, we are,
That's
because
huge.
we don't license, corporately owned, wholly owned dispensaries were sort of the largest.
Yeah.
We have, we're going to have 14 in April, but I mean, look at a Starbucks where they have, several thousand stores in the state. Or, liquor stores where there's, hundreds of thousands in the state. So, right now there's probably about, depending on who you ask, 900 to 1,000 legal cannabis dispensaries in California. I hope to, at some point, own at least 10% of them.
Okay. That's not crazy.
10%. It's small, but it's, 100.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be huge. So how much are you dealing with, or do you have people, your lawyers, that deal with the cities and the state regulators?
Yeah, we have a whole team. We have a whole
constant battle.
Yep, it really is. So we have several people who work in government affairs, and we have an in-house general counsel. So these are not things that would traditionally be a part of a retail business this size, but it's necessary because there's a lot of red tape, and there are a lot of issues that come up that we have to work through. So it's fairly significant. And on the positive side, it also lets us know who the people are, in various governments who are supportive of cannabis, what the local population wants versus, what the ordinance say. So it gives us some insight, which is helpful.
I was going to say, because that's can't come up, you don't open Pete's Coffee and have to know who's the governor is, who the assemblyman is, who's the senator, congressman.
Definitely not. I mean, sure, having connections helps in any business, but completely understanding the local politics, it's pretty. Yeah.
I mean, what's the number one store for you right now? Just out of curiosity.
Number one store is in Sacramento. It's basically the first location, and it's a very successful location.
That's great. I mean, that's obviously our state capital. So I mean, that's the home of our government, and it's the largest location.
Yeah.
Folsom will probably do pretty well, though.
Folsom will do well.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some other cities.
And doing well is interesting notion too, right? Because part of it has to do with the population and the location, but it also has to do with the number of licenses in the area.
Yeah.
So, like LA is flooded. So, LA is doing very well in terms of selling a ton of cannabis. I'm not sure any individual dispensary is doing that well.
Correct. I was going to say the same thing. And nobody that I know of has built up a name where you go, oh, let me go find that. Usually it's who's open, who's closest.
Convenience.
Yeah.
Convenience plays a really big role because there isn't any real brand differentiation. There's not a ton of consumer loyalty around branding yet. There's not a huge distinction between brands and products. I mean, for better or for worse, most dispensaries sell the same things. So unlike other businesses where you can sort of differentiate by having a certain product or a certain point of view, nobody's really doing that yet. We're in the process of doing that. And I think, for me, a huge, objective is to create the kind of brand that people can feel loyal to, that they do seek out, that they trust. Some of the sort of newer people and the users in the industry may not even understand that not all cannabis is created equal, whether it's quality or potency, or integrity. I mean, some of these products are have tons of pesticides sprayed all over them just to make them grow. And then you're smoking arsenic, and that's predominantly what you're going to find in the black market. But a lot of folks are just finding their dealer or the person who's going to sell them the product for the least cost. But there's a lot of compromises in that I not realize.
My daughters are 26 and 28, and I've shared some of their the stories when I was their age and younger. I mean, you didn't know what you were buying. There was no what strain is it and how many milligrams is it. There was just, you bought whatever the guy put in the bag, and you went home, and then you figured out what it was. It was like,
yeah, and it's usually somebody hands it to you from their sweaty palm, and it's full of seeds that you had to pull out. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day being like, when was the last time you pulled seeds out of a bud? Because that's a fertilized plant, and nobody in the cannabis industry is going to let a plant get fertilized. But back in the day, you just had
everywhere. They would pop.
Exactly.
So that's why I always tell people, like, a lot of the OG stoners don't like some of the dispensaries because they think it's too commercialized and this and that, and the taxes are ridiculous. But I go, it's like technology. It's like, a lot of people travel. Imagine going on a business trip now, Danielle, without your cell phone.
Right. No,
leave it at home for one trip and see how it goes.
I would not do that.
Right.
I would not be willing to do that.
I did it by accident. I left it in my wife's car as she dropped me off at the airport, and I was like, okay, I don't have my confirmation number.
Yeah, no, it's.
How do I
you
get
don't have
hold of
people's
the
phone numbers anymore. Back in the day, you would memorize phone numbers. You could find a phone and call someone. Now it's like, good luck.
And I got to Denver airport and went, okay, where's the payphone at? Right. I had to call 0. I had to find, I had to call the operator.
God, and what if you hadn't lived through a time when there were no cell phones? How would you even know what to do?
Panic. That's why I tell people, it's like, so you go to the dispensary, it's like, I want something for my sleep, but I want, not too strong. Something, you could tell people, like, I want more lemony. I don't like that. I don't like, if it's a good bud tender, like, okay, you need to get into this. Mm-hmm. You're like, wow. So
and there's so many various forms, right? So the way someone consumes or the feelings they have around consumption might affect the form factor too, right? I talked to a guy at my daughter's basketball game yesterday, and he said, I'm 80, I want to try cannabis. And I said, great. And he said, but I don't want to smoke. I'm worried about my lungs. And he said, is there any other option? And I just thought, wow, boy, the world's about to really open up for you. The form
you have a sweet tooth.
Exactly. So, it's the strains, the types, the potency, and the methods of consumption, just a lot.
And that's what, like I said, when it first started, I was so excited to talk to you because it really, if you take that corporate branding mentality and put it into a potentially huge business, it could really grow. I mean, the potential's massive.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I'm just going to do basic math. You have 12 stores,
Hmm.
13, you're 100 million. If you get out to 100 stores, you're a billion dollar business.
Oh yeah. We'll be even more than that because the stores will.
Do more, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah. And all in California.
I know.
California is going to be an $8 billion business in, 4 years, which.
I always try and tell people, like, there's a talk about all the Canadian truckers and all that. I go, you have to understand there's 4 million less people in the country of Canada than in the state of California. I mean, we're bigger than Canada, so
Right.
you don't need to go anywhere else.
You don't. I mean, again, it's hard to operate here. It's expensive to operate here.
And it's going to get worse.
And it's going to get worse. And I would love for a few of the folks who are making these laws to actually run one of these businesses because I think it would change their point of view. But the only reason, to go outside of California is just because, you wouldn't have to deal with as many headaches, but you're never going to have the kind of customer audience that you have here.
Well, you also, if you ever get into your own product, growing it in California is a lot easier than other places.
Yeah. And
temperature-wise and weather-wise.
So many things. I mean, there's lots of ways to grow product, indoor, outdoor, greenhouse, light depth. I mean, there's all this stuff that I've been learning, which has been fascinating. So there are other ways to grow it, but the majority of them, require sunshine. And, California is, has ruled the agricultural market for a long time for a lot of businesses. And so cultivation right now does well. I think once there's some situation that allows for the product to cross state lines, California product will reign, of course.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting. It's such a bizarre world. Like if you ever go to Las Vegas, technically I'm not allowed to bring my California marijuana into Las Vegas, and I can't bring my Las Vegas marijuana into California, even though they're both recreationally illegal.
Yeah.
Because you're crossing a state line, which is a federal. It's just a bizarre world.
I mean, I've never come into any business that felt more arbitrary. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's become silly. And hopefully somebody will be able to push this through so that we're not dealing with some of the stuff that actually hurts the markets, the business, puts people in danger. There's got to be a lot of reform to affect these things because, at this point, there's almost every state in the country has some version of
some level,
legal cannabis business. So the people are ready.
I was going to ask you one last question. Well, I always have a lot of questions, but sorry. You've made some really great hires since you've been there. Have you found it easy or difficult to bring in more corporate-minded people into the cannabis industry?
I've found it easy to bring in the right people because there are lots of people out there who are sitting in the position I was thinking, God, this is a great opportunity. The future is going to be amazing. We're in maybe the second or third inning of this business. Yeah. And if I could bring my expertise to that industry, what would I be capable of doing and what impact would it have? And so within every functional group, there's been a handful of people out there that I've been introduced to who are just saying like, pick me. I've been wanting to get involved in this for a while. So a lot of people are excited about the industry and want to bring in their massive amount of experience in the traditional world into this business.
I just didn't know how much of the stigma was still there. I don't want to tell my parents what I do.
Yeah. Not as much as I expected. And I really think it's just changed. And I mean, I think the last couple of years have really changed that. I think there are enough examples of legitimate business people, and there are enough new people who are trying the product that I think stigma is depleting pretty quickly on all levels.
I would say probably more so in California than
Well,
some
for
of the
sure, with everything.
Midwest states. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, when you start seeing CBD products at rodeos, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah. And I mean, there's certainly also pretty strong bipartisan movement too. I mean, because I think, this issue, I think, is pretty favorable amongst the libertarians of the world. So you've got, the Democrats and the libertarians both working to legalize it.
yeah.
I think it really is something. It's one
Well,
of the
and
few issues that
The
falls in.
Republicans like the money, so
And Republicans like the money, and there's, Republicans right now are the ones who are trying to move to legalization.
that's what
So
I'm seeing too. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of support for it. There's some holdouts, and in fact, in some cases, the holdouts are not even the people you'd expect. Some of the holdouts are the people who are benefiting from the black market.
Well, like my neighbor.
Yeah.
I was surprised. Do you think the black market's ever going to go away?
Um, I think so. I mean, it's hard to imagine that world, but you don't really get hit up very often for moonshine these days. I think I think it'll go away when the prices, because of the reform, the taxes have allowed the prices to be competitive with that market.
Agreed.
And as the consumers start to realize again that all the products aren't created equal, and that consistency and brand and quality are going to exist more in a legal environment, I think the consumers are just going to move that direction. So might there be some people out there, back alleys? Maybe, but only because it would absolutely only be because somebody's looking for the absolute cheapest product that somebody's, grown in their yard or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think there will be, it won't be like organized like it is today.
You don't think it's going to come up from down south anymore as much?
No, I don't think so, because there's just too much great product available. And again, the only thing that's making it not competitively priced with some of these, black markets is the taxing, because the taxing and the labor that's required to run these businesses is expensive. But once you reform those things, there's less incentive to be creating, a substandard product to try and find an audience for.
Is there a way to, will there ever be a way to lower the tax rates?
Well, I hope so. I mean, so right now,
It's high.
it's burdensome. So right now, cultivation, there's a tax on cultivation for people who grow the product. And in California, not only is there no other agriculture that's taxed, but it's very often subsidized. So, the government's paying you to grow product, where our product is being taxed at cultivation, and then it's being taxed at the city level, and then it's being taxed. There's an excise tax to sell the product. So it's heavily burdened with taxes. So again, I'm having conversation with various people, attorney general and people who are having an impact on some of the future decisions. But these are the things that are, again, maybe it's great that the government's making a lot of money through all these taxes, but it's going to put a lot of people out of business, and net, there will be less of them. So they've got to find the balance between, overtaxing, and making all that money, and maybe, bringing the tax rates down to earth level so that, more businesses can be successful, which ultimately will make more money for them.
Yeah, I know governments don't like giving back money that if they don't have to. So like, rescinding or lowering their tax rate is going to be giving back the money in a sense.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. But again, I think there's enough pressure. And again, if somebody just, does the math, they'll realize that, more successful businesses bring in more taxes, ultimately. Once they figure that out, I think that it'll have an impact.
How important is the accounting for each location? And I asked because we were on our way to the dispensary. This is back when it was medical. And I'm sitting in, because I don't have a medical card. My wife did. She goes in, and as she's about to walk in, I'm sitting in the car. All these guys in black SWAT outfits start getting out, and they go into, and they raided the dispensary while we were there.
Oh,
And,
wow.
it was intense. And so
Wow.
they just let, hey, you guys need to go. And we're like, okay, and
Yeah.
then we came
Yeah.
back, and it was because of they're they're very strict about their accounting, I guess.
Yeah, no, there's lots of systems in place in California that require us to account for, every little bud moving
Yeah.
from one hand to another. So the requirements are tough. The accounting for the product is very, very strict. I don't know if screw it up a little bit if you're going to have a bunch of, people in black suits show up at your door anymore, but you definitely could lose your license.
Well, that's what they're still there, but yeah,
Mhm.
they
They probably got fined or something.
yeah. But yeah, I want to share these stories because a lot of consumers are like, wow, it's so expensive and this and that, and I don't think they understand really what's involved running the business. It's not just you're going to plant in the backyard and cutting it and putting in a thing. It's
No, and especially if it's a legitimate business. I mean, there's a
yeah,
lot of work that goes into growing the plants in the first place, then cutting them and then trimming them and then putting them in whatever form they end up in a jar or whatever, then transporting it. Then it gets transported to the location that's paying rent, that's paying labor, that's paying a ton of taxes.
taxes.
And all of that is what happens, especially in California, when you're running a legitimate business and you're following all the rules.
Yeah,
But the good thing is it 99% of the time leads to a much better product, fresher, healthier, higher potency, better quality.
all the above. Yeah, but there is a lot that goes into it.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, what's the best way for my listeners to follow you or follow what Perfect Union has coming up?
They can follow either on Instagram, Perfect Union, at Perfect Union, or at Denyelle Bruno on
Okay.
Instagram.
Perfect. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
I'm excited to. I'm going to visit some of the stores just to go see them when I go up
Yeah.
north.
Yeah, you should. You should.
What,
Yeah, look forward to filling you in on all the exciting things we're going to be doing in the next few months once I can announce them.
so outside of Sacramento, what's the store you would send people to?
Well, we're going to be opening a store in, I think, April, in Folsom Street in San Francisco.
Okay, I'll hit that one.
Pretty wild. It's going to be pretty exciting. It's going to be unlike anything I think you've experienced. So if you happen to be in the area, I would wait for that one.
That's my territory. I'll be up in San Carlos on the peninsula, and then I have a family. It's in Oakland and Alameda, so I'll head over.
Great. And then maybe someday we can talk boots.
Apparently, you have too many.
I do have too many.
Absolutely. So I'll definitely hook you up with a pair of boots.
Okay. So. All right. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, Danielle. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, likewise.